So yeah, I'm Dan Jenkins. Yeah, I'm going to talk about. I'm going to have to hold this for the video, aren't I? This is really annoying. Yeah, so I'm going to talk about WebRTC. And I guess if you've all been listening to Dean's talk just now, and like he was talking about WebRTC, well, partially about WebRTC, and whether or not it was maybe overhyped and all of that jazz. Where is WebRTC today, and where's it going to go in the future? So I'm Dan_Jenkins on Twitter. I appreciate follows and conversation. And there's my email address if you want to talk to me after the conference. So yeah, I'm based in the UK. I founded a company called Nimble8 Limited. I'm a web guy who does telephony. And I guess, yeah, that's what Matt was just kind of talking about. I think I bring a different perspective to the telephony area with what we do in the web, and that's changed an awful lot of things in the past 3 or 4 years. So I've spoke at Astricon for I think 6 years. That's a guess, and I worked on Respoke, which was Digium's WebRTC platform as a service. You might know me as a Lego slide guy. There's no Lego in this slide though. And I love open source software. So as a show of hands, who's actually seen me talk before? Thank you. Thank you for coming back. That means I'm doing something right. Okay. So yeah, my company is Nimble8 Limited, and we do real-time communications consultancy. And that's the end of the plug for the business. So yeah, I'm a Google developer expert. If you don't know what a Google developer expert is, it's basically a program where Google kind of rubber stamp a load of people in the world and go, yeah, you know what you're talking about. So I was the first WebRTC Google developer expert in the world. And now there's, I think, 4 or 5 of us. And yeah, Nimble8 Limited are the organizers of ComCon. ComCon.xyz, if you're interested, which you should be. Anyway, back onto the talk. So yeah, a long time ago in a browser far, far away, and I'm hoping they didn't turn down the audio on the out of this thing. I mean, I'd love to just stand here and like watch video, and that can be my talk. But yeah, let's get on with it. Yeah, so I guess for a little bit of background, I do an awful lot of Lego slides and a lot of Lego Star Wars slides. So I decided I'd just do a Star Wars theme-based slide deck this year. So WebRTC, who knows what WebRTC is? Okay, better question. Who doesn't know? And it's okay to say you don't. It's okay to say both as well, yeah. That is actually a valid option. So WebRTC stands for Web Real-Time Communication. So most of you have heard of it. How many people have built something with WebRTC? Cool, okay, that's what I kind of expect nowadays. WebRTC isn't like the Empire. It's not evil, but it could be the ruler of all modern day RTC, and that's why WebRTC is like this amazing thing. It's not just for the web. It's this amazing kind of new way of writing applications. No laughs. Tough crowd. So yeah, let's take a step back and take a look at what's actually included within WebRTC itself. So WebRTC gives you access to media channels and then also data channels in a peer-to-peer connection. That connection might be between my laptop and my phone, or it could be between my laptop and a server up in the cloud. WebRTC itself doesn't specify a transport, which is awesome, but terrible all at the same time. And that's kind of hurt things in the early years. But it's now 6 years old, and at 6 years old, it has a huge user base. So yeah, some YouTubers are 6 years old, and they have huge user bases too, which is quite strange. But I stole this slide from a slide from Chad Hart, and it shows the adoption of WebRTC against other technologies at its age. So IMS had 13 million users at 5 years old. RCS had 15. Skype had 405 million. And WebRTC, theoretically, if you work it all out, had 500 million. Plus all of the kind of Internet of Things types of devices that you could actually use it on without any need for a plugin. So WebRTC today, you can get it on desktop and mobile in all of the browsers. And that's the first time I've been able to say that. I gave this talk at ClueCon a month and a bit ago, and I still couldn't say that. So that is kind of remarkable. I can pick up my phone and use Chrome, and my friend can pick up his iOS device and use Safari. And that's what it was meant to be like 3 years ago. We're finally at this kind of amazing point of being able to do things. But it's not just the web. It's also native devices. So Android, iOS, and also embedded devices like the Raspberry Pi. But it's not just those either. It's things like Asterisk and FreeSwitch, and Camilio with like RTP engine. There's all of these things that we can now utilize to build amazing applications, and they all kind of work really well together. And that's what 6 years worth of pain has brought us to. So yeah, what's new? I mean, that's what you all came to see this talk about. So yeah, a short time ago in a browser really close to us, Edge announced at the beginning of this year that they were going to support WebRTC, and that was huge. That was absolutely brilliant to see that Microsoft weren't just kind of going down their ORTC route, which really is completely different and segregates things. So that was huge at the time. But then this kind of came out. And the lack of data channels is disturbing. So to me, a WebRTC implementation isn't complete until it's got data channels. And they've said that data channel implementation is a low priority. This, again, segregates what kind of applications we can build today. With like, oh yeah, you can just go fire up your browser and like it will just work. Well, no, it won't. Like if you're using Edge, it won't. And I mean, after a really long time, we finally got Safari. So this is me back in 2015, around this time of year, so 2 years ago, saying, I'd be surprised if we didn't have something in Safari and iOS by May 2016 at WWDC, because that would just make sense. Well, what a fool I was. So yeah, we've now got Safari, and it's available in High Sierra and iOS. This was appear.in. This was appear.in. If anyone doesn't know what appear.in is, it's a great website. It's free, and you can go and have meeting rooms in appear.in and have great collaborative sessions with other people using WebRTC. So this was a session in WebRTC in Safari after it got announced, and it 99% worked straight away, which is pretty cool. The great thing about Apple and the worst thing about Apple is when they do something, they do it really, 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 really well, but they're always really, really, really late to the party, and so they should be able to do it well because everyone else has made the mistakes. So yeah, Appear.in just kind of worked off the bat, and that is pretty awesome. So yeah, so we've got a load of APIs that are available within WebKit itself, such as the change in what am I trying to say here? The change in screen sharing, for example. So if you're not, if you don't know, the screen sharing API in Firefox and in Chrome and in Opera required you to use a plugin, not really a plugin, an extension. So that kind of ruined the party when we all said, oh yeah, WebRTC, it's like, you don't need a plugin anymore. And then we forced people to go and download an extension that was like 99% the same everywhere for every single website to enable screen sharing. But that's changing as well across all of the browsers. So what hasn't changed in the past 2 years? What's still pretty crappy? So it's still not a standard. So we're now 6 years into this thing, and we were talking about having a standard probably 3 years ago, getting close to a standard 3 years ago. And we're still not there, and that is pretty depressing, especially when I have conversations with clients and they go, oh yeah, this WebRTC thing's cool, like, but it's not standard, is it? So it could like completely change, and like, so why would I write an application on WebRTC today? So I mean, that's not going to happen. If anything, we are pretty much at a standard now. There's just a couple of things left, but the fact that it isn't is a massive blow. SDP is still a bitch. Sorry. So all of you VoIP people in the room are going, ah, you dumb web developer. No, SDP is still a bitch. And if you start writing a WebRTC application and you go, oh, I know SDP, like I've been doing this for years in telephony land. Well, good luck to you, is all I'm going to say. It's completely different. There's loads of like niche cases and extra things, and they just don't. It shouldn't have been used, but hey ho, we are where we are today. Simulcast. So Asterisk just announced version 15, and Asterisk 15 has an SFU within it. So if you don't know what an SFU is a selective forwarding unit, or select forwarding, I can't remember. Selective forwarding unit? Selective, anyway. So they went with unified? Yeah. So there's two different approaches to simulcast. One's called unified and one's called Plan B. And things are changing in the world, and browsers are starting to go, okay, we're gonna use one way. But we still can't write a unified way, sorry for the word unified, but we can't write a unified way of doing these things across browsers. And that, again, sucks. Adapter.js is still needed, a lot. Who doesn't know what adapter.js is? So adapter.js is something from Google, and basically it is a shim across all of the WebRTC APIs. So you didn't have to deal with the fact that RTC peer connection was prefixed in Firefox and in WebKit and everything else. You just included adapter.js, and adapter.js kind of sorted out all of those things for you. It essentially made it so that it was like the standard. So today, I mean, I just told you, like, we're pretty much at a standard. We're just kind of waiting on a few things. So, I mean, surely we don't need adapter.js anymore. I mean, if we're kind of almost there, then that's great, isn't it? No, we still need adapter.js completely and utterly. I tried to do a project without it about 2 months ago and failed miserably. And that, again, sucks. How many times have I said sucks in the past 10 minutes? Platforms as a service haven't been dying. So probably 2 or 3 years ago, there were a ton of WebRTC platforms out there, and they were out there for a bit, and then they all seemed to like slowly die, well, quickly die. It was, I think, one every 2 months at a certain stage. But we're now at a point where platforms aren't dying. There's like these 5 core platforms out there that, yeah, I guess I would class 5 of them as like the main ones. And they're stable, they're strong, they're not going anywhere. So that's amazing. I mean, that's the first time I've said something positive about WebRTC in the past 10 minutes, isn't it? And then there's more and more open source software options available. So there's Asterisk 15 has just released their SFU. There's something called Media Soup from a guy called Iñaki who helped create the JS SIP library. And there's a ton of other projects out there. Twilio recently bought Corrento. Corrento is an open source video media server, but it's still open source and it's still out there, and Twilio pumping money into it. So that's amazing. So the whole ecosystem has been growing, even with all of those things that suck. So, I mean, other than the browser, like, what else is new? I mean, I went through, yay, we have new browsers, and that's great. And then I went through what hasn't changed, and most of it sucks. So what else is new and what's exciting? Getting started has never been easier. You can pretty much go to like, you can go to webrtc.github.io/samples and be confronted with a ton of examples about how to get started with WebRTC. That just wasn't the case when I became a Google developer expert 4 years ago. It's something that I really wanted to help drive forward, because the concepts of WebRTC might be really kind of obvious to anyone within telephony. I mean, there's media streams. You need a way of setting that call up. But I mean, at the very beginning, WebRTC wasn't kind of aimed at you guys. It was aimed at web developers, and no one explained the difficult stuff to them. There were diagrams of like, oh yeah, you make these peer-to-peer connections, and it just kind of works, and that's great. But no one told us about all of the difficult stuff. No one told us that you needed a stun server to be able to kind of to get hold of an IP address so that things worked outside of your local network. No one told us that because they didn't want to make it difficult. So, I mean, getting started 4 years ago as a web developer was terrible. But that's getting better and better and better. And more people are starting to build stuff with WebRTC. Flash is pretty much dead. Let's all have a party. So yeah, if you don't know, Flash is about to die in all of the browsers if it hasn't already. And that means that all of those websites out there that use Flash to create like video sessions and audio sessions, all of those websites need to change how they're doing things. So one, that's great for me as a business. Like, people are coming to me and going, oh, I need to migrate this Flash website over to WebRTC. So that's good for me, but it's also amazing for the web. We now no longer have to have this like old decapitated thing that like let in security flaws. And we can actually start building things on the web without plugins, etc. And it kind of forces people to do things the right way. So that's pretty awesome. I mean, let's just go back and party again. But yeah, there's been a ton of under the hood fixes that I'm really not going to go through because it's Monday. No, it's not Monday morning, is it? It's Wednesday morning. It's Wednesday morning after a keynote, and I want to keep this kind of light. But I mean, there's the URL for Discuss WebRTC where everything kind of gets discussed. Google put in their release notes there. Firefox put in their release notes there, and there's conversation. But I mean, what's improved? So screen sharing improvements, like I said earlier. Except in Chrome, you don't need an extension to be able to screen share anymore. There's also a ton of other screen sharing improvements like frame rate, etc., and better control over anti-aliasing for text and things like that. There's a ton of improvements over the past year for that. Better echo cancellation. So if you're on a Mac and you try and use a WebRTC session and you get a load of echo, that should all be kind of fixed now. 6-7 months ago, it was an issue. So Google pretty much rewrote their echo cancellation stack, which then made its way into all of the other browsers that then use Google's stack. Promise-based APIs. It's not a big thing for anyone that isn't a JavaScript developer here, but I mean that's pretty cool and changes how we develop applications today. And another reason why we don't need adapter.js anymore. Get stats. So you can go and get stats on how your call is, how your session is doing while it's in flight within the browser. But the browsers did things differently at the very beginning. And so we're now almost at a point where everything is a standards-based approach. And then we've got VP9 in Firefox and H.264 everywhere. So H.264 is a mandatory codec for WebRTC, and so is VP8. H.264 is, I guess, a big thing for embedded devices and for mobile phones, because your mobile phone has a chip in it that is able to decode and encode H.264 using hardware. And until all of the browsers supported H.264, that meant having a WebRTC session on your phone drained your battery considerably. So we're now at this kind of awesome point where we can actually start using codecs in the right way. Better jitter handling, and then we finally got turn TLS in Firefox. So we can actually send signaling and things over to a turn server and have it encrypted. Which then also inherently improves being able to get through firewalls and things like that. But I mean, the biggest thing for me is this tweet by Justin Uberti. I can never remember how to say his last name. Justin works for Google, and he heads up the WebRTC project, I guess, for Google. So within this tweet, Justin said, finish the specs, new APIs in Chrome, interrupt testing, and enterprise-level reliability. That's their roadmap for 2017. When was that tweeted? That was 19th of May, 2017. So finish the specs. Well, that's not quite done, but hopefully we'll get there. New APIs in Chrome. There are new APIs in Chrome, and it allows us to do awesome new things. And from what I understand, there is a ton of interrupt testing going on automatically. So every single time they create a new version of the WebRTC stack, there's interrupt testing. So that's why WebRTC doesn't break every week anymore. And then enterprise level reliability. So that's, from what I understand, that's targeted at like the military being able to use WebRTC and have confidence in it. But there's a URL there that kind of goes more into detail about the WebRTC roadmap from Google. I'm saying Google quite a bit, and I'm not sure if everyone knows, but Firefox, Opera, Chrome, Android, and native iOS applications all utilize the code at webrtc.org. So that means that whenever Google improve WebRTC, it improves everywhere. It doesn't happen automatically. They all have to bring in newer versions, etc. But all of that work by Google inherently improves everything across the board. So yeah, that previous slide, their commitment really does mean everything, because it improves absolutely everything. But yeah, there's more and more projects being added to the foray with new approaches. And I mean, I'm hugely excited to go and play around with the new SFU within Asterisk 15. I might even make a dangerous demo if I get some time. So Asterisk has been able to do WebRTC for a very, very long time now. I think when WebRTC kind of got announced, it was within Asterisk very, very quickly, because I played around with it and failed miserably, and I was on IRC with Josh Colt going, help! Because I was a web guy trying to make WebRTC, this new thing that was aimed at web devs, but really wasn't, work within Asterisk, the thing that I kind of knew how to use, but didn't. So Josh helped me immensely getting all of that working back in the day. So, yeah, Asterisk has been able to do WebRTC for a very long time, but has kind of, to a degree, fallen behind other projects. So when it came to kind of recommending a WebRTC, a VoIP platform that could handle WebRTC to clients, don't tell anyone, but I told them to go use FreeSwitch. Because FreeSwitch itself was much further along, and it was much more stable, and you could kind of expect things to work 99% of the time. The Asterisk project was a little bit behind and more, I guess, reactionary to problems. And that's not good for clients. So yeah, I always point to people at FreeSwitch because it was more mature. But that will change now. So new features in 15 allow us to have multiple tracks within one connection going up to Asterisk, which mean multiple streams. Sorry, going up to Asterisk, which means that I can send like multiple audio tracks, and I can send multiple video connections and things like that, and then have Asterisk deal with everything for me. And I know that to be able to make the SFU work within Asterisk, they've kind of rewritten a whole lot of stuff to make it more reliable, let's say, and more up to what we would expect it to be today. So, I mean, it seems like not a lot has happened, and like, where's the golden nugget of my talk that you all came to see? Thank you very much. I mean, stop it. How many people have a project on GitHub, and you get an email from someone, and they go, is your project dead? It hasn't had any activity in a while. I get an email like this at least once a month about one of my node modules. End user numbers rising, but less shouty news is really, really a good thing. It means that it's kind of there, and we don't need to shout about it anymore, and it's just kind of, there's new features and there's improvements every single week. But there's no point shouting about it anymore, because they're just improvements. They're just there. It's what we expect. Kind of like the Asterisk project. Like, every year we get this kind of shouty like new version, but throughout the year there's just these steady improvements all the way through. That doesn't require like the Asterisk team shouting and going, yeah, we released like 14 point whatever. It's just a good thing. But yeah, I mean, there are still issues. I mean, how many times did I say it sucks like half an hour ago? But yeah, WebRTC compatibility in web apps and in native apps, and within things like Asterisk don't break every single week, which is amazing. But yeah, it doesn't mean that it won't happen. this was back in January this year. And there was an issue with WebRTC, Asterisk, and Chrome 57. Basically, I mean, you can go read my blog post about it, but the Chrome team changed how RTCP muxing operated, which inherently broke absolutely every single project out there using WebRTC with Asterisk. So luckily, I caught it early because I use a pre-release browser every single day for all of my browsing, because I need to know when WebRTC does break. So, well, actually, I found it, and Tori here from Voxbone helped fix it and tell me what was actually wrong. So thank you very much, Tori. So yeah, I wrote up this blog post about what was actually wrong and reported it to the Asterisk devs, and I think within a couple of weeks, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we had a patch to be able to go and fix Asterisk, which was pretty cool. While I'm talking about this, the RTCP muxing flag that you change to make it work for a little bit without Asterisk changing is about to be removed by the Chrome team. The patch was only released for versions 13 and 14, and it will be obviously in 15. So that means that if you're using version 11 for any WebRTC projects, they are all about to break. So you shouldn't be using 11 anymore anyway. Is anyone using 11? Okay, move. Upgrade. No. So if you're using 11 for non-WebRTC stuff, then I'm sure it's fine, and go talk to a Digium person and they'll tell you all the reasons why you should upgrade. But on the WebRTC front, if you're using it for WebRTC, in the next couple of weeks, none of that will work. So I guess, what did I learn from that? Well, what did I already know? What's my golden nugget there? If you build a product with WebRTC, go and use a pre-release version of a browser every single day. Don't just go test your application once a week in that browser. Like, move all of your browsing over to that until you hit a bug that means that it doesn't, like, you can't use that browser anymore, and then you go back and use a different, you go use a stable version of a browser. But you will not find what you are looking for if you just go into that browser for 10 minutes every week. It just won't happen. So yeah, WebRTC in 1 year. I mean, where's WebRTC going to be in a year? I mean, I was pretty much wrong, like back in 2015. So, I mean, who knows? It's never been a better time to go and build something using WebRTC as it is today. There are a ton of projects out there doing amazing things. There's a project called Be My Eyes, which allows people that can see to see for blind people using WebRTC. That's pretty amazing, and just shows what we can do with the power of WebRTC and the fact that we inherently don't need a load of cost and everything for those kinds of applications. So yeah, go build something amazing today. And I mean, that's pretty much my talk. Yeah, you're probably thinking, My point is, there's no shouty news this year, but that's an amazing thing. And I'm pretty happy that there is no shouty news about WebRTC, because it means that we're pretty much there. And now's the time to go and build things with it. And I mean, yeah, ComCon, the call for papers opened today, and tickets went on sale today. So go take a look at the website and see if you're interested putting in a talk, and see if you're interested in maybe attending. Thank you very much.
Do we have any questions for Dan?
Yes. As soon as we saw the WebRTC, I think it was 3 years ago in one of these conferences, we tried to begin to implement this mainly for doing voice, for doing a soft phone or something like that. But the main problem that I see, and it still is for me, is still as today, is the opus coded and the transcoding in the asterisk. How is that at this moment?
Well, Matt's probably a better person to talk to than me. But so Opus is now within Asterisk. You can download there's an open source version if you don't want to use the Digium version, but I absolutely think you should use the Digium version. When you create Asterisk, you can say I want a Opus codec. It's a binary codec, so you can't really see what's in it, but just trust Digium. They're the guys that kind of make this awesome system that we all use for free. So why should we not trust them until they give us a reason not to? So yeah, Opus is now in Asterisk. So in Asterisk 13 and 14, you can go and download an Opus codec. In terms of transcoding, it kind of entirely depends on your scenario. So if you were calling in from the PSTN, and so you had ALAW or ULAW, and then you were calling out or to a WebRTC endpoint, and that's Opus. Doesn't have to be Opus. It can be ULAW or ALAW, so you don't need to do any transcoding if you choose to. I would 100% tell you to make your WebRTC endpoint use Opus and take the pain of transcoding, because servers are cheap, but bandwidth isn't. WebRTC endpoints come in all shapes and sizes in terms of CPU usage on a phone or out on a cellular network. If I just take the lazy approach and say all of my calls out from the PSTN into a WebRTC endpoint, well, we can do that with ALAW and ULAW, so let's just do that because then we don't have to do any transcoding. But that inherently ends up giving you a terrible user and an end user experience based on bandwidth drops and packet loss. If your WebRTC end is using Opus, then you can utilize things like FEC and all the good stuff within Opus to then be able to deal with that connection. So my answer is don't worry about transcoding. If you need to give it more oomph, then give it a server with more oomph to be able to handle that transcoding. But in the end, there's no point having that phone call over to a WebRTC endpoint if it doesn't succeed. And that whether or not it succeeds or not isn't based on whether or not it gets answered. It's whether or not someone can actually understand that phone call. Does that answer your question? Yeah?
So that answer to that is difficult to what we normally do with Asterisk is a voice, no?
Right.
So have get for me have to get like to clarify how all that kind of thing.
Okay, come speak to me afterwards and I can...
Just continuing on this question, with regards to Opus, you were mentioning one of the values is the save of bandwidth. Have you actually found that Opus still saves bandwidth when using it with Asterisk, despite not having any congestion control mechanisms like Timber or REM to tell it to stop using full HD?
We should go get another mic. Yes, I have seen that it does help, even without those other things that you talk about that I don't 100% understand. But Matt can probably talk about that. But in itself, the FEC stuff within just without like going, oh, I'm going to change between narrowband and wideband or whatever. The fact that you are able to deal with packet loss in itself is a good thing. Yes, there's more work that can be done, but it's taken us a long time to get Opus into Asterisk, and we should just be kind of asking for these features that you're talking about, so that they don't get dropped on the floor.
Okay. I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to understand the answer, but I know one of the things about WebRTC is they've left it very open as far as signaling mechanisms and transport mechanisms and what have you. And I think in this crowd, probably we'd have a lot of people who would tend towards SIP because we've already got some familiarity with it and what have you. Have you got a sense of what sort of standards are becoming popular, or what ones are shining because they have a good team behind them, or they just inherently do a good job of that sort of stuff? And is SIP one of them? What are your thoughts on that?
So in my experience, there's SIP over WebSockets, and then there's also XMPP, and then there's proprietary, and that's pretty much it. So do I think that SIP is a good signaling mechanism for WebRTC? If I was making a brand new application that did not talk to a server like Asterisk, where I don't need to talk SIP, I will not use SIP, because it's a very talky and very long kind of messaging format. And so I would end up making a proprietary thing that uses JSON, for example, JSON strings. I've never used XMPP myself. A lot of people do use it, and a lot of people love it. I've never used it myself. If I was making something that did talk to a telephony server, such as Asterisk or FreeSwitch, I would probably use SIP, just from a ease perspective, because I need to integrate into Asterisk, for example. If I were to write something using JSON over WebSockets, I'm going to have to write something into Asterisk to understand that. So from an ease perspective, and being able to do things fairly quickly, I would end up using SIP, and I would only change when I had a reason to.
Do you mind if I comment real quick on that too?
Sure.
Because this is an interesting topic for me. Daniel yesterday remarked that in SIP there's really only 5 required headers. So you can trim it down pretty far if you can throw away a lot of things. From my perspective, the problem in WebRTC is it's the SDP. I mean, you buy into the offer-answer model, and suddenly that starts dictating how you actually deliver that SDP, and it's the SDP that is constrained WebRTC. And so, whether you choose to wrap that up in JSON or XML or, whatever, you're still going to be, at the end of the day, delivering this massive, nasty, horrific-looking thing that is a pain to parse and even harder to understand, and everything else just kind of ends up being a religious discussion.
See, I told you, SDP is a bitch.
Exactly.
I think we had one last question down here, and then I guess any more I'll take afterwards.
Yeah, I was just asking if you have any experience about scalability, building a particularly voice and video application with WebRTC and Asterisk. Any features, any suggestions? I mean, hundreds of calls.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, the only difference between, in a really dumbed down form, the only difference between a SIP call and a WebRTC call is the fact that it's encrypted, to a degree. Really dumbed down, but and therefore you can have hundreds and hundreds of calls, voice calls on Asterisk with WebRTC endpoints. You scale it in exactly the same way that you would scale Asterisk for a SIP thing. That changes when you add video into the mix, and whether or not you end up deciding whether or not you want to use an MCU or a SFU. An MCU kind of forces all of those video streams together, and therefore there's a ton of processing there. Whereas an SFU doesn't really touch those streams and kind of just goes, oh, I'm going to send this stream over here, and I'm going to send this other one over here, and I'm not going to send this one anywhere. And therefore an SFU is typically easier to scale, but it is really down to your scenario and writing things in a scalable way, from a horizontally scalable way, from the very, very beginning. But that's where companies like Nimble Ape Limited are more than happy to help you.
And with that, one last round of applause for Mr. Dan Jenkins.
Thank you.